My wife secretly inherited $400, $0 from her ex's estate and used it to buy a new house behind my back. Then she forged my signature to refinance it, and now her brother is threatening to take everything in court over a supposed joint property I never knew we owned. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story about betrayal like this, but life has a funny way of throwing you into the middle of chaos when you least expect it. It all started with a gut feeling I couldn't shake, something off about the way Lisa, my wife, was acting. She's always been a little bitchy, quick to lie when it suited her, but lately she'd been downright paranoid, secretive, and snappish. I'd catch her sneaking her phone around, hiding texts, and canceling plans at the last minute, little things that made my stomach tighten. But I never imagined the extent of her lies until I stumbled upon it myself. One night I was cleaning up the living room and I noticed her phone lying face down on the coffee table. Nothing unusual, right? Except I saw a text pop up as I was passing by, a message from someone named Alex saying, "Can't wait to see you tonight, don't forget the cash." My heart hit the floor. Cash? Who the hell was Alex? And why was Lisa hiding money from me? I decided to dig deeper. I started going through her messages. It was a mess of lies, but one thing stood out. She had been secretly talking to this guy Alex for weeks, maybe months. They arranged to meet up and she kept calling him her friend, but the tone of the messages was flirtatious, suggestive. It was obvious they'd been sleeping together. The worst part, I saw her mention a big inheritance she'd just gotten from her ex's estate, something she never told me about. She inherited $400, $0, and I'm pretty sure that's how she bought the new house behind my back. At first, I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe she was lying, making up some story about inheritance to cover her tracks. But then I found receipts for a house she'd bought in her name alone, a mortgage she'd taken out without telling me, forging my signature on the refinancing documents. I was stunned. How could she do this? How could she lie about something so huge? And more than that, I started to realize she'd been planning her escape, maybe even using me as a cover. The house was in a neighborhood I'd never even heard of, an upscale area she'd never mentioned. She told me she was just looking, but I found the deed, the mortgage papers, the whole thing. She'd bought that house behind my back and I was just supposed to sit here and pretend everything was fine. That's when I saw the real betrayal. Not just the affair, but her sneaking around with money, forging my name, turning our lives into a lie. That night I confronted her. I was trembling, furious, heart pounding so hard I thought I might burst. I threw the papers on the table and yelled, "What the hell is this, Lisa? What have you been hiding from me?" Her eyes widened and she tried to brush it off, calling it just a misunderstanding, nothing serious and a mistake. She said she'd planned to tell me eventually but was afraid I overreact. Yeah, right. She told me she was just trying to secure our future, that she needed the money to fix things between us, but I saw through her lies. She wanted the money, the house, and maybe a new life without me. The thing is, I was angry, but I was also crushed. I'd trusted her, built a life with her over years, and here she was, sneaking around, screwing her ex's memory and lying to my face. I felt betrayed not just emotionally, but financially. She, stolen from me, lied about our joint assets, and used her brother to threaten me with court over some joint property I never knew we owned. All of it came crashing down in one night. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, just replayed everything in my mind. Her lies, her sneering face when she was caught, her excuses. It was like waking up in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. That first night, I realized this wasn't just about her cheating on me. It was about her stealing my trust, my money, and my future. I'd always been the guy who thought honesty was the foundation of any relationship. Now, I saw how fragile that was, how easy it was for someone to betray you when they think they can get away with it. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. The morning after I found everything, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I couldn't sleep, and my mind kept circling back to her lying face, the way she'd spun her stories about the house, the inheritance, the mistakes she'd made. I'd been so blind. For years, I thought we were a team building something real. Turns out she'd been planning her escape right under my nose, using her ex's money to buy a house I didn't even know existed, then forging my signature to refinance it, all behind my back. I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. First thing I did was call an attorney. I wanted to understand my legal position because I was pretty sure she'd committed fraud and I didn't trust her to tell the truth. The lawyer told me that her forging my signature on the refinancing documents was a serious crime and that I might have grounds to sue for fraud and even get the house back. But that wasn't enough. I needed proof, hard evidence, to show that she'd lied about the inheritance and manipulated the situation to her advantage. Meanwhile, I started digging into her financial history. I wanted to see how much she'd taken, where she'd hidden the money, and what else she might have been hiding. I found bank statements showing deposits from her ex's estate, wire transfers to accounts I'd never seen before, and even a few suspicious cash withdrawals. It was clear she'd been planning this for a while, and her words about needing the money to fix our problems now sounded like the biggest lie of all. She'd been scheming, probably with her brother, to get as much out of me as possible. And then there was the house. I decided to visit the neighborhood. It was a fancy place, full of mansions and expensive cars. I parked nearby just to get a look at the place she'd bought behind my back. Seeing it in person was like a punch to the gut. That house was worth well over $300, $0 maybe more. And she'd bought it with her inheritance, money I never knew she had. And then she'd forged my signature to refinance it, claiming I was on board. The thought that she'd been living a double life, hiding this from me, made my stomach turn. I also started to suspect her brother was involved. I found out he'd been pressuring her to settle things quietly, threatening to take everything in court if she didn't hand over the property. Apparently, he'd been feeding her lines about joint property we supposedly owned, which I knew nothing about. I confronted her about it and she just lied, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that it was just a legal thing she was dealing with. But I didn't buy it. I knew her brother was trying to manipulate her, probably to get a cut of whatever she'd stolen. That day, I decided to confront her again, this time more directly. I told her I knew about the house, the inheritance, the forged signature, everything. Her face turned red and she started crying, swearing she didn't mean for any of it to happen. She claimed the inheritance was a gift from her ex, that she'd only bought the house for us, and that she was trying to fix things because she loved me. Yeah, right. That's when I realized how good she was at spinning stories, how convincing she could be when she wanted to lie. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her she had two choices: come clean, tell me the full truth, and work with me to fix this mess, or I'd go straight to a lawyer and start legal proceedings. She looked at me like I'd just betrayed her even more, calling me crazy, saying I didn't understand her motives. That's when I saw the real bitchiness come out. She was angry, defensive, and still trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty. It was clear she thought she could just talk her way out of it, but I'd had enough. That night I sat alone in my house, trying to process everything. I felt hurt, angry, betrayed, and honestly, pretty damn stupid for not seeing it coming. I'd always believed in honesty, in building a life together. But she'd been lying from day one. The money, the house, the affair, everything was a lie. I realized I was at a crossroads. I could try to save what little was left of our marriage, or I could cut my losses and walk away. But one thing was clear: I was never going to trust her again. The damage was done, and I knew I had to decide what my future looked like from here. After I confronted Lisa that second time, things got even messier. She was furious, crying, begging, trying to spin some new story about how she did it all for us, how she thought she was protecting me by hiding the inheritance, and how the house was supposed to be our fresh start. But I wasn't buying any of it. I could see right through her bullshit. She kept insisting it was just a mistake, that she never meant for me to find out this way, and that she loved me too much to do anything to hurt me. Honestly, I felt like I was talking to a stranger, one who was trying to cover her tracks with lies. I decided I needed to get serious. I told her I was going to involve a lawyer, that I wanted her to come clean, and that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. That night, I started gathering everything: bank statements, texts, emails, the deeds, the forged signatures. I wanted to be ready when I sat down with my attorney. I also decided I'd need to confront her brother, Rick, who had been pressuring her to settle quietly. I knew they were in this together somehow, probably scheming to take whatever was left of our joint property in court. I couldn't let that happen. The next morning, I called my lawyer again. We discussed the situation: fraud, forgery, illegal property transfer, and he told me I had a strong case. The forgery alone could land her in serious legal trouble, especially if I took it to court. I also told him about the inheritance and the house she bought behind my back. He advised me to get a forensic accountant to trace where the money came from, and a real estate expert to evaluate the property. I knew I needed hard evidence if I was going to fight her and her brother in court. Meanwhile, I decided to do a little digging into her finances myself. I subpoenaed her bank accounts, and what I found was shocking. She transferred thousands into accounts in her brother Rick's name, probably to hide the money or to prepare for some kind of legal battle. I also found payments to a woman named Melissa, who turned out to be her supposed friend, but I suspected there was more going on. The money trail was clear. Lisa was orchestrating a whole scheme, probably with Rick's help, to get her hands on as much of her ex's estate as possible, then use it to buy her freedom from me. That afternoon, I decided I'd had enough of her lies. I told her I was going to see the lawyer, and I warned her that if she didn't come clean, I'd start pressing charges. She looked panicked, trying to apologize, crying again, saying she'd never meant to hurt me, that she was just desperate to fix things. But I wasn't buying her crocodile tears anymore. I knew her game. She'd been lying for months, maybe years, hiding her secret life, her money, her affair. The more she begged, the more I saw her true character: selfish, manipulative, and completely untrustworthy. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head: the lies, the betrayal, the house she bought behind my back. I felt like a fool for trusting her all these years. I'd been a good husband, the guy who worked hard, paid the bills, and never suspected a thing. Meanwhile, she was out there, secretly inheriting hundreds of thousands, lying about it, and planning her escape. I couldn't believe I was living a double life with someone I thought I knew. I decided I'd have to take control of the situation. I wasn't going to let her steamroll me, or let her brother threaten me into giving up what's rightfully mine. I was going to fight for what was mine, for the truth, and for my dignity. I knew she'd try to spin her way out of this, but I had enough evidence to blow her lies out of the water. The road ahead was going to be rough, and I knew she'd fight dirty. But I was done being the naive husband. From now on, I'd do whatever it took to get justice, and to make her pay for what she'd done. Over the next few days, I threw myself into gathering evidence and planning my next moves. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer, who was already drafting legal documents. I also hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar that had gone into her accounts, to show the court exactly how much she'd stolen or hidden. Meanwhile, I went through every piece of paper I could find: bank statements, property deeds, emails, text messages. I wanted to be prepared for the fight ahead, and I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without trying to spin some more lies. One thing that kept gnawing at me was her brother Rick. I knew he was the puppet master behind the scenes, pushing her to claim some sort of joint ownership of the property we never even knew about. I decided I'd confront him directly, face to face, to see what he was really after. I found his number in her phone and called him. I told him I knew about his involvement, about the money transfers, and about the house she bought. I warned him that if he tried to threaten me or take me to court over some fake joint property, I'd countersue and expose everything. Rick's reaction was predictable. He got defensive, tried to deny everything, but I could hear the sweat in his voice. I told him I had all the proof: bank records, deeds, the forged signatures, and I wasn't afraid to go public with it all. I also made it clear I'd be seeking legal restitution for the money she'd stolen, and that I'd sue her for fraud and breach of trust. If he thought he could intimidate me, he was dead wrong. I told him to back off and stop trying to manipulate her or me. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to spin her story. She kept insisting she did it all for us, that she was just trying to secure our future, that she loved me and never wanted to hurt me. But I saw through her bullshit. She was cornered, and her desperation made her more bitchy and manipulative than ever. She'd lash out at me, accuse me of not trusting her, and cry about how badly she'd screwed up. But her tears didn't move me anymore. I was past caring about her excuses. All I cared about now was proving her lies in court. One night I caught her trying to sneak her phone again. She was texting someone and I snatched it from her hand. I saw a message from Alex, her lover, talking about their plans to meet, and also about how she was going to take everything from him once she got her hands on that house. Seeing that message made me furious. She was planning to leave me, using her inheritance and her affair to do it. I realized I'd been nothing more than a pawn in her game. That moment marked a turning point. I knew I had to act fast. I called my lawyer again and told him I wanted to file for divorce, not just to end things, but to protect myself legally. I also wanted to freeze all her accounts, seize the house, and make sure she couldn't hide any more money. I was done playing nice. I was going to take back control of my life, even if it meant going to war with her and her brother. The emotional toll was immense. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, more than I'd ever felt before. I'd trusted her, loved her, and now I was left with nothing but a mountain of lies and a sinking feeling that I'd been played for a fool. But deep down, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been living in a false sense of security, and now it was time to stand up for myself. I'd been betrayed by the woman I loved, but I wasn't going to let her walk away with my life and my money. Not without a fight. The legal process moved quickly once I handed everything over to my lawyer. I filed for divorce, citing fraud, breach of trust, and financial misconduct. I also demanded an audit of all her accounts, the house, and any assets she'd hidden or manipulated. I wanted everything out in the open, and I was prepared for a nasty fight. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior only got more erratic. She'd lash out at me, accuse me of destroying her, and cry that I was ruining her life. But I knew the truth. She was the one who had ruined everything, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Her brother Rick, meanwhile, started to back off a little when he saw I was serious. I had obtained court orders to freeze her assets and prevent her from transferring any more money. I also hired a private investigator to look into her dealings, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. She'd been planning her escape for months, buying the house with her inheritance, forging my signature to refinance, and even setting up accounts in her brother's name to hide the money. It was a mess of lies and theft, and I had the evidence to prove it. The day of the court hearing arrived fast. I sat across from her, feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. She looked defeated, her bitchy facade gone, replaced by a look of desperation. She tried to argue that the house was joint property, that I had some claim because I was her husband. But I had the documents, proof of her sole ownership, the forged signatures, the inheritance records. I laid everything out in front of the judge, who listened carefully. I could see her trying to manipulate the situation, but the evidence was clear. When the judge finally made his ruling, it was a blow to her. The house was awarded to me, and she was ordered to pay restitution for the stolen money. The court also confirmed that her signatures on the refinancing documents were forged, which meant she could face criminal charges. Her brother Rick was also served with papers warning him not to interfere. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief that I was finally getting some justice, but also sadness for what I'd lost. My trust, my marriage, the life I thought we had built. In the aftermath, I started the long process of rebuilding my life. I sold the house she bought behind my back, cut ties with her completely, and focused on healing. I couldn't help but think about all the lies I'd been fed about love, honesty, and loyalty. I realized I'd been naive, thinking that marriage meant sharing everything. But in her case, she'd used that trust to manipulate me, steal from me, and plan her escape. Looking back, I can't say I regret standing up for myself. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I've learned a lot. I've learned that some people will lie, cheat, and steal if they think they can get away with it. And I've learned that no amount of love can fix a betrayal like this. I'm still healing, still trying to trust again, but I know one thing. I won't let anyone take advantage of me like that again. If anything, this experience has made me stronger. I just wish I'd seen the warning signs sooner and that I hadn't been so blind to her true nature for so long. But now I'm moving on wiser, more cautious, and finally free from her lies. In the end, I learned a brutal lesson about trust and deception. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, turned out to be a master manipulator, willing to lie and cheat her way to a new life while I was left in the dark. The betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible, especially knowing she'd used her ex's inheritance, forged my signature, and even involved her brother in what felt like a conspiracy to steal everything I had. It's a harsh truth that some people will do anything to escape accountability, even if it destroys everything they once claimed to value. Getting out of that situation took everything I had: legal battles, emotional turmoil, sleepless nights. But I don't regret standing my ground. I fought for my rights, for my dignity, and for the truth. The house is gone, her schemes exposed, and I've started rebuilding my life from scratch. I've learned to be more cautious, more skeptical, and to trust my instincts, something I ignored for too long. Looking back, I see how blind I was to her true nature. I was so focused on making our marriage work, on fixing things, that I didn't see the signs. The secretive texts, the sudden paranoia, the lies about her inheritance, all of it was there if I had just paid attention. But now I know better. I know that some people are just good at hiding who they really are until it's too late. My advice to anyone reading this is simple. Don't ignore the red flags. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. If you find yourself caught in a web of lies and deception, don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Sometimes you have to lose everything to gain clarity. And in the end, the most valuable thing you can do is protect yourself, emotionally, financially, and legally. Because betrayal isn't just about cheating, it's about someone taking everything you've built. And that's a pain no one should have to endure.